Hello, everyone. Welcome to our very first Executive Table Talk. My name is JT O'Donnell. I'm the founder and CEO of Work It Daily. And I'm so excited to be talking today to Melody Turk and Lisa Perry, two executives here on LinkedIn, about the idea of the skills that you need as an executive to succeed in today's hybrid workplace. Because let's face it, this hybrid thing is not going away. So, little backstory, I was getting some feedback about the challenges that a lot of leaders, a lot of managers are facing now that they have to, lead a team remotely, or at least semi-remotely. And, how do you fairly judge people? How do you make sure they're productive? It's just a lot to take in, this hybrid workforce. So I put it out there, and both Lisa and Melody were kind enough to jump right in response. So of course, they're now on the hook to discuss this with you, right? We're going to put them in the hot seat today. So welcome, Melody and Lisa.
Thanks, Hi there. Thank you.
All right. So listen, I'm going to start off with you, Melody, because I grabbed kind of a quote from what you sent me. I thought it was really interesting. You said, every executive in a hybrid workplace needs a good time management formula. Knowing that you need to be more intentional with your time is key. Intentional plotting out of your time on the calendar and sticking to it is critical. Having others understand your time priorities is essential. So, you are a learning experience executive. Talk to us about, your work now with the hybrid environment and why this has come into focus for you so much.
Well, I find it most often it's the employee conversations, right? When you're in an office, you can hop by your team and talk to them for 5 minutes. You can catch a cup of coffee with them. And then you have your remote employees, they don't get that time. And so then you're building this a little bit more intimate relationship with the people that you're in the office with, and you're not. And so then you have a team meeting that might be virtual, and you have employees that get left out. So I'm like, if you say that you're going to spend, I don't know, 10 hours a week with your employees, you actually have to plot that. The in-person ones, I don't know, plot that you're going to stop by and do rounding like every morning. But then you have to plot out all of those people that work remote too. So they're still getting the same amount of time for you. And believe me, they're going to notice if you don't.
So it's really interesting you say that, because as someone who went fully remote, my company is fully remote since the pandemic and is staying that way. You're right. I had to fix that pretty fast, or I didn't feel connected to my staff. Do you see the amount of time it takes, I guess, varying in terms of getting those online workers, those remote workers, feeling as connected as those fully in-person workers?
That's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, I, schedule half-hour meetings with my team every week. So I have one-on-ones with them, but you might not spend quite the same amount of time, I guess, in person. So I'm not really sure.
It's an interesting thought. Here's another question. Camera on or off? How does that make you feel from a remote connection standpoint? What's your thoughts?
On. We've had a whole bunch of discussions about this, and it's really hard. I mean, sometimes you get this fatigue from being on camera, and we will have occasional meetings where we're like, all right, everybody just turn them off. But we also realize that you can't connect. You don't see the body language. You don't notice that Melody talks with her hands all the time, or that, Lisa is quiet and sits there with her hands folded all the time. You don't get those body cues on camera as well as you do in person. And so we just found that you have to have them on. Even if, you're in your sweatshirts and your hair's on a ponytail, we want to see you.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree. We say cameras off Mondays and Fridays. So we give people no camera days, but then during the week we're on camera. That has seemed to help. And I'm curious too, when you're setting those 30-minute meetings, is that been pretty structured as well? Or do you allow for flexibility, or have you made that sort of like a standing weekly meeting? How does that work?
I have them as standing monthly meetings with all of them. And we've actually changed the times though. We found that when is your more downtime? Because at first we scheduled them, everybody had one in the morning, and they were like, this is when I really want to do my project work. And I feel like it's more professional and needs to be more structured. And that's not what I wanted. It was to build relationships. So we did it in the afternoon, which it cracks me up. You guys you all have long hair. it gets about 2:00 and somebody said, "Oh, Melody's going to put her hair up now." It's 2, and those are things that you would notice when you're in person. So I thought it was really great. I mean, they're still getting to know who I am.
Yeah.
Just by the little tiny cues that come across on camera. So I think you definitely can make them structured, but you've got to figure out when is the best time to actually build a relationship.
Interesting. So interesting. So that kind of dives into some of the things that you talked about, Lisa, and I want to bring that up because you said in your piece to me, we've seen more changes in the workplace over the last 2 years than in the previous 2 decades. In these 2 years, we've learned quite a bit about working remotely, including how to enhance leadership skills in this new work environment. And you specifically talked about 5 different skills executives need: trust, communication, accountability, flexibility, and virtual innovation. So I'm actually going to start with that last one first. Talk to us about virtual innovation.
Well, virtual innovation is about making sure that you're removing barriers and having this open dialogue and being on the same page. It's easy to say one thing to one person and another to another, and then you have mad confusion. So you want to make sure that you have strong, open communication to lead better collaboration and involvement, so that you're being free to communicate openly and have people be risk takers and remove those barriers. And you have to be open and honest with your employees and accept small errors so that you're all moving towards that larger goal so that they'll behave the same way. It's kind of that saying, monkey see, monkey do, right?
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you have an open, free environment. And it's in the prior to hybrid, you can pull people together. You can show that more openly. And in a hybrid, it's harder to do. So you want to make sure that you are modeling that behavior and you are having opportunities to provide collaboration and open and being vulnerable to show that you can do those behaviors and model that.
I love it. You actually cited that Microsoft has even done a study that said employees remote work puts productivity and innovation at risk. I think for the reasons that you're talking about, right? It was always just so much easier. Put everybody in a room with a whiteboard, get rid of all their distractions so that they couldn't be off multitasking. And now we're trying to, herd that or rein that all in, which I think is a challenge. Let's talk about accountability. I'd love to hear from both of you how you're making sure people stay accountable in the hybrid model. So Lisa, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, it starts from the top, right? You've got to model the change that you want to see. So if you expect a hybrid workplace to embrace new technologies, then you have to embrace new technologies, right? So if you want people to be reachable through the workday, then you've got many people in different locations working at different times. Then you need to be reachable. You have to model that behavior and be accountable, and you need to showcase that so that people are as well. Starts from the top.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Melody? What are you doing for the accountability piece?
There's one thing that we started, and just because it came up this morning, we started a decisions channel in Teams where when people make decisions, they have to actually put a post. And I find it really interesting because it used to happen in conversations. You'd meet someone in the hall and you'd be like, hey, we're working on this project. What do you think? Should we send this out to leadership? Should we send it out to everybody? And you make a decision and nobody else knows about it, right? You might see some other people in the hallway. And we found that was happening a lot. So people will put something in the channel and they'll be like, hey, so-and-so, we were talking, we decided this is how we're going to handle the marketing for this project. It gets questions going. And then it also allows people to go back and say, hey, you put this in the decision channel. I thought that's what we were doing.
Right.
So it definitely builds the accountability on both sides. So.
Yeah, like a paper trail, right? Like the virtual paper trail. All right, let's jump to trust. Because if I hear the number one complaint from executives, they are not trusting their staff. They are very worried about what they're doing at home. That is not going away. I think that's probably the biggest reason they want everybody back in the office.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about how you've built trust and how you know that your staff is doing okay. Lisa, what do you do?
You have to model and reinforce trust yourself.
Mm.
If you want people to trust you, you have to trust them. Show up on time. Be willing to take risks. Express your ideas freely and openly. Be willing to admit mistakes yourself and learn from them.
Yeah.
Follow through on your promises and commitment, and be willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that the team is aligned and pulling in the right direction. You also have to provide employees the opportunity, give them the extra responsibility. If, they haven't attended meetings that they normally do, give them that. Give them the opportunity to present to executives that they haven't in the past. Tell them you trust them and give them those responsibilities. Those are some of the small things. There's also training programs. Give them formal training or self-paced training. Tell them that you trust them, and that gives them more opportunities to discover new talents. Those are some easy opportunities to tell them you trust them.
Yeah, I love that. If I trust you, I'm giving you things, therefore I trust you, right? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Melody, what about you? How are you at the point where you trust that your staff's doing what they should be when you can't see them?
It's really about deliverables for me, JT. And I struggle just like any other manager. I'm like, I don't see her on there, or I haven't seen him log in. But then I go back to my list and I'm like, okay, what are the deliverables I gave them for this week? And I just continue to tell myself, and I continue to tell them, it doesn't matter. This is the work that I've assigned to you. This is what I want to see from you. And then if you don't deliver, we're going to have some talks about that. Mm-hmm. How you schedule your time is your business. And I have to remind myself and them, to say that. And we really talk about deliverables. I just had to talk with someone and she's like, I don't really feel like I'm spending enough time on work. And I was like, I felt really excited that she felt like she could share that with me. And then I'm like, okay, let's see. Do you want to take on more things? Let's talk about it. So I think you got to create that environment, right? Lisa, you talked about that earlier for innovation. So let's talk about, what do you want to do? What might you want to take on? So it all kind of rolls together. But I share with my other colleagues, you have to just make deliverables. You have to manage that way. You can't manage their time. And I'm not going to either. I'm going to have a dentist appointment or stuff. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to be there all day, every single hour. I don't want people to rely on that. So I don't want to rely on that either.
Another thing that you could do is also be transparent too, in terms of what it is that your goals are, your deliverables are, and bring the team together and work on, hey, here are our assignments. And you have team accountability and we're all moving in this direction. We all got this assignment. We've all got this goal. We've all got to deliver this result. How are we working together to do this?
Yeah, I love it.
Trust.
Well, folks, we're here today. This is Executive Table Talk, the inaugural edition, our first edition. I'm here with Lisa Perry. She's a global digital marketing executive. And I'm here with Melody Turk. She's a learning experience executive. Both of these individuals have a lot of years of experience in this area. And we're having an honest conversation about what it takes to lead effectively a hybrid workforce. We've got a great question here, by the way. I want to bring it up. Thank you for asking this, Dr. Roger Nargero, or am I saying that? Naranjo, I hope I'm saying that right. I hate when I butcher names. We're going to call you Dr. Roger. There we go. Dr. Roger says, how do you stay away from micromanaging your direct reports? Ooh, I love that one. Melody, I'm throwing that one in your court first.
Well, as you already heard, I struggle with this too. So it depends on the person, right? I think there's some people that are just, you connect with more and that trust builds a little bit faster than it does with other employees. But I think it goes back to deliverables. If you're wondering what they're doing every day, then maybe you have deliverables that are daily and put up a report where they can put in their status. You don't have to actually call them and look for them, every day. Are they online? Is their little bubble green or whatever? And maybe you just have a report that's a little bit more detailed than others. So they just know they can, put in the status for all the things that you've given them. And you can check it a million times. They'll never know. And I think that keeps you from doing that micromanaging, because you don't want to be that person,
You
right?
don't.
But
You
we
do
all
not.
worry.
Fastest way for turnover, right? Fastest way for your folks to leave you. I agree. Lisa, what do you do to avoid micromanaging?
And I think it goes back to that team accountability, right? You've got your assignments, you've got your deliverables, you've got your results. Are you delivering to that? Your whole team is working to hold accountable. If you have results you have to hit and they're measurable and they're actionable and everybody's assigned and everybody's working together, you'll find that the team starts to hold each other accountable. And if somebody's lagging behind, the team starts to put pressure on the whole group. And it kind of takes some of the pressure off of you. So you got to get that team working together.
I agree. For me, it's been twofold. One, we have a team meeting where everybody kind of updates everything they're working on. And I think just the sheer volume of project work, nobody wants to be that person that sounds like they're not doing a lot. So that's been helpful. But also, I train them from the beginning. If you don't want me to micromanage you, you update me. So however you want to do that, whether you want to, do you want to call with me or do you want to email me or even what, like you said, Melody, someplace, I just need you to do it so I don't have to. And it works great. They figure it out, right? And they get into that cadence of doing it. So
Yeah,
the key is just to not micromanage folks. You got to find your ways for sure.
No
Great question. So we're going to move on to another great question from Rita. What are one or two signs that your peeps don't trust you and how to build it? I love it. So Lisa, what do you think is a sign that your staff isn't trusting you?
They go around you. They stop communicating with you. They are not communicating in a two-way situation. There's a lot of backstabbing, big red flags, when you start getting people pulling away and not listening to you. And, it's just horrible.
I
You
agree.
need that two-way communication. You need collaboration. You need your team aligned and moving with you. And when those signs are not there, you've got big issues on your team.
I totally agree. Melody, what about you?
Well, I just did something where I asked for feedback, and I try to do this as Lisa. I try to model what I want the rest of the team to do. And so I asked for feedback. What are my top 5, weaknesses? And one of them, it came up, was trustworthiness. And I was like, oh, this is bad. I'm like, let's talk about it. And I've come to find out I was making decisions outside of meetings.
Interesting.
I wasn't making it during the meeting. And I had all the information. They're like, we feel like you're not talking to us. I was like, oh, we can fix that. So I think sometimes you need to ask for feedback.
I love that. First of all, I love the fact that this is when I see a truly confident executive, when we can sit and talk about the fact that we are not perfect. We're going Mach 10. We're trying to make things happen and just asking for that feedback and not taking it personally and going, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I can adjust that. We need way more of that in leadership these days. Way more of that. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think emotional intelligence is huge. It's just not about delegating. It's about being aware of your behavior and how it affects other people and being open to receiving feedback and knowing that you're going to make mistakes and it's okay as long as you learn from it, and accepting that feedback and saying to your staff, I would like to hear back from you, and saying it over and over, not just once, because if they say it once, they're going to be like, oh, okay, great. But saying it over and over and over so they know that there's a comfort level and you mean it and there's a trust, because they have to hear it repeatedly so that there's a safety that says she really means it or he really means it.
It's true. Repeatedly. And then when they finally open up, not reacting the wrong way, right? Like the fact that they felt that comfortable with you, Melody, I'm thinking about that. We all just have to know this is new to everyone.
Yeah.
Hybrid environments, remote environments, it's new to everyone, including us. The sooner we can say we don't have all the answers. And oh, by the way, this is probably going to evolve. How we do this is going to evolve and shift as our work shifts, as we get more comfortable with it, whatever. Just think it's a far more effective way. And I agree, that is true emotional intelligence, I think, at its best. So we've got a lot of people giving thumbs up about the trust factor. The last piece I wanted to hit on, because we talked about trust, accountability, virtual innovation. Let's talk about flexibility. because people had a lot of flexibility during the pandemic. And now I feel like we want to continue to give them that flexibility. But I'm also hearing from managers that they feel like some people are now abusing that flexibility. So what's the right amount of flexibility, or how do you get to a place where it's not getting out of hand? Melody, you said you're pretty comfortable with it. Have you dealt with any of the flexibility abuse?
I haven't had anybody abuse it. I definitely try to have some conversations about what do you want your workday to look like, and usually that's not like the first conversation that I've had. I'm trying to build that relationship, and I've had a few new employees, and then I want to talk to them, and I usually preface it with, here's how I like to work. I like to have a certain amount of time in the morning. I have this time that, because I work at home with my husband, I really don't like to have meetings during that time so that I can spend it with him. There's certain times once a month that I take off early because I have another commitment in my community. So I set it up and let them know that my schedule's already flexible. Mm-hmm. So where do you want to do that? And it doesn't always come out like the first time, because I get it. People are like, well, do I tell her that I really want to watch this show every afternoon at 4:00? But after a few conversations, I'll get the, hey, I would really like to have a longer lunchtime. I think I want to be off work like from, 1 to 3. And usually it'll come out because I really want to go work out. And that's when this class is. And so I think, back to all the other conversations we've had, as long as you're building that relationship and that trust, they're able to tell you that. And then you don't expect it, right? They're not going to be working. Yeah. But I think you have to build an environment where they're comfortable enough to tell you, I'm not going to be online for this amount of time.
Right. Totally agree. What about you, Lisa? Have you seen any of the abuse?
I think it goes back to having those open and honest conversations that we've talked about. Melody just brought that up, and having the trust factors, having the clear goals set and accountability. And if people are breaking that, they're not meeting their goals, you're not having the open conversations, then the system starts to break down and people start to abuse the flexibility, and you have to be you have to have constructive feedback. You have to be transparent. You have to set the open conversations. You have to have clear goals and expectations. And as long as you're doing that, then people will behave and have those. You'll see the people abusing it right away, and you'll have those constructive feedback and say, this isn't working. You're not meeting your goals. You're not meeting your expectations. And, we've got to address that.
Yeah, exactly. I think for me, it's definitely been a case of I've been lucky. I haven't had anybody abuse it because I think we have a lot of flexibility to begin with. That was one thing we were before the pandemic. It was always okay to go book those doctor's appointments, whatever, have that time. And so, but people know that when they're out repeatedly and for extended time, they're impacting other people's work. So I think we've really managed to. You're making up the time, you're doing whatever it takes so that these people can actually get their work done. There's just nothing worse than that. I think, I don't know, just my 2 cents. Folks, we're here today. Just if you're just dialing in, we're here live for the very first time. This is Executive Table Talk. This is where I invite executives on to talk about some of the most important subjects that are hitting us from a leadership perspective. Our first session today has been all about the hybrid workforce, how to manage it, and what are some of the issues and challenges. I'm so lucky to have Melody Turk here. She's a learning experience executive. I've got Lisa Perry here. She's a global brand marketing, digital marketing executive. And they're both talking honestly and candidly, along with myself, about the experiences we've had. I would love to hear from you, what questions you have, any thoughts that you have on this subject. I see that we've got one here from Gary. Gary says, if you were making the decisions only, would you want employees on-site, remote, or hybrid? Wow, I'm going to put you ladies on the spot. So Gary wants to know, what do you prefer? Who's going first on that one? You want me to? I'm good with remote because I want to be remote. As the owner of the company, it has changed my life to be fully remote. Candidly, it's taken a lot of pressure off me. I can't work out of my home anymore. I had to take an office for myself, co-working space, and my teammates are always welcome to come to this office now. But I think that flexibility for me has worked out well, and I don't know that every company can say that. So, that's my vote. I don't know. What about you, Lisa? Where are you at?
I embrace remote. I think it has changed my life. I've been able to, I'm in Los Angeles, and, commuting is horrible. A wear and tear on the car, and a distraction from my personal life, taking away from that. And so it's been just wonderful, quite honestly. And I think, every company has to decide what works best for them. But for those that can embrace it and do it for their workers, I think it's a wonderful thing. You've just got to figure out all of these key things that we've been talking about: communication, trust, accountability, flex. These are key things to really work through, but it's been wonderful for me.
I love it. Melody, you've been remote for a while too, right?
I have. So I'll be the outlier here. I would really, my personal preference is to be in an office. I do think hybrid is probably the better way to do that. And we're right hot and heavy in budget season, and we're trying to actually think about, are there more times that we can get the team together? And of course, I work in an organization that's across the United States, so that's just not possible. But there are times when I start a new project, I'm like, gosh, this would be so much easier if we were just in person for a day. And so I think that flexibility, I'm going to try to work into our budget, because, people went remote and they were like, oh, well, now we don't have any real estate costs, but they didn't put those back in to some of that hybrid stuff. So I think now, like, our company's starting to realize maybe we need a little bit more in time than we thought. So I'm happy to lean that way, but yeah, if it was totally my preference, I'd be one of those that would be back in the office.
I love it. Oh, that's amazing. I think you're right there. I think we're going to see a real rise in conferences and getting together, work retreats, things like that, in order to recreate those connections and those opportunities for sure. So we've got a question here from Patty. She says, do you think 100% remote work will lead to U.S. residents losing positions as they can be outsourced elsewhere for cheaper? So I'm going to give the answer to that, which is, Patty, yes, that is 100% a risk, because I'm already talking to HR departments that are telling me, look, I can get 3 people in Europe for the price of 1 here in the U.S. That being said, I'm going to turn it around on Lisa and Melody and say, what do you want to see from your remote workers that gets them to keep their job at the pay that they're making now? What has to happen for you to say it's worth every penny? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, go ahead, I'll come in. I think they need to make sure that their skill sets are sharp, that they've got a global understanding of the marketplace, and that they are understanding of the key industries that they're in, and the competitive set, and that they're sharp on those. I mean, those are some skills that they need to bring to their industry to make sure that they have a competitive edge.
Yeah, I would agree. Melody, what about you?
Well, I think going back to the hybrid thing, for us, like the organization, it would be really hard for us to go outside the United States, because bringing people together, that gets very expensive. So it's not, so the balance there of paying them less, but having to spend more to bring them in, you'd have to do some analysis on that, and if it was really worth it. So, yeah,
in your case, it sounds like the jobs are safe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's enough people in the pool to pull from in the United States that it's worth it for us. Yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, I think people really have to start thinking about the value they create. You're a business of one, you're a service provider to your employer, and you have to be thinking about how are you saving or making them enough money to justify that cost. I think what's interesting as managers, as executives, we've had to do that our whole career. Right? Because as you climb that rank and you hit those levels, you're making decisions, you're coming up with ideas and concepts that actually generate money or save money for the company. So we've had that mentality for a long time. But I think for the first time, a lot of professional level are realizing, wow, I actually have to deliver on that promise and justify, what I want to be paid. And I think that's going to get really interesting for people as they move forward. And I hope what everybody's hearing today is that we as leaders, as managers, are trying to figure this hybrid work situation out. One of the ways that you can stand out is by certainly making it easier for us, not harder. Right. So we're sharing with you all the secrets of what we're looking for. Deliver on that. If you want to keep your hybrid situation or your remote situation, exceed expectations on that, so we don't have to question it. I mean, that's really the key in my position. All right, so we've got one more question here from Michael. Michael says, talking about trust, do you monitor your workers' online presence? That's interesting. I personally do not. I have chosen not to install anything like that to monitor. I know lots of companies that do. Do either of your companies monitor online?
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I know there's software out there. I know it can be expensive for a company to do. I just, in my opinion, I know if somebody's working or not. I don't need to monitor how much time online. You can just tell by, I think it goes back to Melody's point, the deliverables.
Yes.
That clear to
But
who
no,
they're not
also-
doing them.
And
Right?
also the trust factor, right?
Yeah.
You need to bring in that trust factor.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. This was awesome, ladies. Thank you. Our very first executive table talk on the books. This is a great session. Folks, tell me what you thought in the comments. Please let us know. Also, what other topics would you like to see us discuss here on Executive Table Talk? We're going to be back here every single week at noon Eastern Standard Time here on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, sharing this information with you. We would love for you to participate. Lisa, Melody, you were awesome. Thank you so much again. And until
Thanks,
next
Judy.
time, everyone, good luck. Take care. Bye-bye.